ATP, what it do with your boy Clay More Rain, back at you guys with another one. And salute, of course, to all my subscribers. Of course, if this is also your first time tapping into this content, I am going to invite you to go ahead and hit that subscribe button. Hit the bell icon as well so you are getting alerts when content like this is dropping. So it is fight week. We're 2 days away, right? Today's Thursday, October what, 9th? Right? So we got the 10th tomorrow. We've got the weigh-ins with Jaron Boots Ennis and Usman Lima. And of course, a big showdown Saturday night. I believe today, Jaron Ennis and Usman Lima should be kicking off some sort of a press conference. We'll be watching that, of course. This video right here will be dropping probably a little bit before that, or maybe during that. I don't know. I'm definitely shooting it before the press conference, right? But let's get into it, guys. Jaron Boots Ennis debuts at 154. The space has been waiting on this for a while now. I mean, as a boxing fan, we've been up and down with Jaron Boots Ennis at this point. It's been a journey, to say the least, starting from, relationships with Cameron Duncan, rest in peace to the great Cameron Duncan, his management deal that he had also with Steven Espinosa and Showtime. A lot of people thought that Jaron Boots Ennis was actually a PBC fighter, but he wasn't. He was working with Steven Espinosa. And the difficulty, the uphill battle he had, being that he was caught in that crazy matchup and negotiation process between Errol the Truth Spence Jr., the big fish himself, against Terrence Bud Crawford. That ended up stretching out so long, and ultimately we saw how that ended up. But unfortunately, one of the people who got caught with some strays on the side, who wasn't able to move his career forward the way he wanted to, would have been this guy right here, Jaron Boots Ennis out of Philadelphia. But needless to say, most people who've watched Jaron Boots Ennis moving with his career have all probably been on the same page to say that this guy is definitely the future, a future pound for pound fighter, face of boxing, attributes that he carries inside that ring. Outside the ring, he's been a little bit shelled up and doesn't really communicate as maybe a lot of us would rather him do. And we'll get into that deeper into this video, because communication is key, right? Communication is key, and Jaron Ennis hasn't necessarily been the one to facilitate spaces for the best communication. But needless to say, he makes this deal with Matchroom after splitting with Cameron Duncan and going through his court situation. And Eddie Hearn has been great for Jaron Boots Ennis, I would say. I mean, I'm sure some people have different perspectives on it, or a different outlook on it. But at the end of the day, Jaron Boots Ennis, since he's been with Eddie Hearn, has been able to ultimately unify the welterweight division. Well, put a unified belt in the division, and also become a lineal ring magazine champion, which really is like the true champion of the division, right? Because you can be a champion in the division, but the real true champion in the division is at least a person who can unify, or undisputed at the end of the day. But Ring Magazine is one of those titles that kind of like satiate your appetite if you're looking to become the champion of that division. So he was able to become a lineal champion at 147. During this journey, fans were up and down with where Boots should go, who he should fight against. With Eddie Hearns and Turkey Al-Sheikh in the space for the past 2 years, there were opportunities for Jaron Boots Ennis to fight the likes of a Virgil Ortiz or a Teofimo Lopez. We heard all the rumors about negotiations in the background to see him be in these fights. And I believe most fans would agree that Jaron Boots Ennis still needs that signature breakout fight, right? And he hasn't had it yet, but Boots has wanted to become a champion. He has his own ambitions and his own legacy that he wants to fulfill. And if you're a real traditional boxing fan, you got to be able to relate to that. You've got to be able to empathize with that, right? And resonate with a fighter who fights that way. And I think, a lot of fans like to see their fighters fight that way, me being one of them. So he was given the grace to do that. Coming into 154 now, debuting, we saw him deal with some difficult weight cuts. We wanted to see him move up in weight, and he finally does. We thought it was going to be Virgil Ortiz, right? I think most people thought that would be negotiated. That would be a fight that makes more sense. Virgil Ortiz, coming off of a hand surgery, didn't seem like the schedules for some reason or another aligned with what Boots and Eddie Hearn wanted to put together. So that fight, I don't want to say fell through, but it didn't come together, right? At the end of the day, rumor has it, or people speculating, or Eddie Hearns has spoken on, and Jaron Boots Ennis has spoken on it, saying that they sent out multiple offers, right, across the board. I won't go through the names, but those fights did not go through. Ultimately, came to a road warrior in Usima Lima from out of Angola, living and residing, I believe, in Portugal right now. But a road warrior, and in a an IBO champion, right, in the 154-pound super welterweight division or junior middleweight division, whatever tickles your fancy. And this seems to be the fight that we have now. The boxing space is upside down a little bit as far as how they feel about it. Most people feel like this is a disappointment. They wanted to see Boots jump right into the fire and get at the big dogs at 154. According to Turkey Al Sheikh, potentially, if not Boots and his team, were interested in quote unquote tune-up fights that Turkey Al Sheikh wasn't interested in. So Eddie Hearn facilitates and puts the space together for this fight to happen again in Wells Fargo Arena in Philadelphia, where he will get acclimated to division by a puncher in Usima Lima. Now let's get into the fight a little bit, right? Let's get into this fight, because at the end of the day, that's what it's all about. No matter what anybody wants to say about this situation, Jon Boots Ennis is in front of his first 154 pounder, and this guy is a puncher. Now, stylistically, this fight checks all the boxes for it to be a very interesting, exciting fight. Jon Boots Ennis, not somebody who shies away from engagement, and therefore giving us great fights. If you're a real fight fan, you love to watch Jon Boots Ennis fight. Now, Jon Boots Ennis's last three particular fights, and if I can remember them off the top of my head, we'll go with Emelianis Stanionis, we'll go Karen Kukadajian, and we'll go David Avanesian. I believe those are them, right? In these last three fights, the space has been critical of Jon Boots Ennis on the back end of victories, nonetheless, right? 2 out of those 3 victories, stoppages, still scrutiny based on the fact that Jon Boots Ennis is a exciting fighter, but seems to get hit too much, right? That's what the census says, right? This is what the narrative is, that he's getting hit too much. A good friend of mine on another channel I was on said he's known for running the red lights, right? Breaking the rules, but still being able to get through it. Not a very policed community, so he's running through these lights and he hasn't caught tickets yet. Well, going up to 154 pounds, the question has to be, and probably is on the front of a lot of people's minds, who is Jon Boots Ennis? He hasn't had that signature fight yet. Him being at 154, is the 147-pound version of Jon Boots Ennis going to be a sustainable business model for going into a 154-pound division that has a lot of punchers? Virgil Ortiz, Bakram Murtazaliev, Sebastian Fundora, Usama Lima, right? Potentially Jermell Charlo if he returns, right? At one point or another, Terrence Crawford, who was a WBA champion at the time, but he's moved on to greener pastures, obviously. But still, regardless, to say that lesser fighters were able to put their hands on Boots and get through and hit Boots, and not because Boots was necessarily porous, right? But more so because of his willingness to take chances, right? Be somewhat of a daredevil in the ring, a showman in the ring, but ultimately led to him. If you throw punches, your hands can't be in more than one place at a time, can't be 2-3 places at a time. If you're in the midst of throwing punches, that usually means that you're pretty open to get punched. And Boots Ennis has had a share of contact inside the ring at 147 pounds, but was able to weather those storms. Never has been hurt, never has been buckled that we can tell. And that's a good thing and a bad thing, maybe, right? Good thing because, he's not getting hurt and he's able to give us these great performances, but a bad thing because maybe he's getting used to it, right? We are creatures of habits. And at the end of the day, if he's used to doing this and he's used to taking these shots, then, at 154, does he change up the game? Does he adjust to the new weight class and become more defensively sound going into this fight and show us something different than maybe we've seen in the last 3 fights? Now, in his last fight against Emelianis Stanionis, Boots was a lot more disciplined. Stayed on the jab, stabbing the body with the jab, setting up his shots, using Emelianis Stanionis's aggression and his quote-unquote grit to stand there in the high guard and try to walk Boots down. Gave Boots an opportunity to take advantage of that and ultimately dispatch of Emelianis Stanionis inside of, 6 or 7 rounds. I can't remember the exact number of rounds it took before he stopped him, but he ultimately did end up stopping him, right? So very confident Boots going into the 154-pound division, going to host and have another homecoming event against Usama Lima, coming out of Angola, Africa, but fighting out of Portugal. What do we know about Usama Lima? Because he is a a new fighter for a lot of people who are not very familiar with him, right? But a guy who shared the ring with the likes of Aaron McKenna, right, on a 2-3 day notice, and was able to put on decent performance in that fight, and that being his only loss. He stands pretty square in front of his opponents, but he's a real big puncher. This right here is one of those fights. If you look at it stylistically on paper, it's a fight kind of designed for Boots to look good in, because these are the kind of fights that he likes to be in, with these kind of fighters who are going to push that pace, stand in front of him, and Boots won't have to look for this guy. He'll be right there in front of him in the ring. But what are we looking to see with Boots going into this? Because the name of this event right here, by any chance, is the Master Plan, right? That's what Eddie Hearns has called it, the Master Plan. And why is it the Master Plan? Because there's a plan out there, and there's an understanding that Boots is on the road to becoming the pound for pound best fighter in the world, at least top 5. And how does he do that? Well, his legacy, he wants it to be aligned with, right, walking adjacent to the traditional sense of championships, unified championships, undisputed championships, lineal championships, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. He wants to stain the book. So this right here for an IBO title, not really recognized as far as in the 4-belt era, but still a title. And before he gets into the division and starts to compete for all these other titles, an opportunity for him to acclimate to the space. And I think it also gives us as fans an opportunity to see the kind of Boots that's going to be fighting at 154. Now, if you're the kind of fan of Boots who enjoyed and appreciate the way he fought at 147, and you think that's going to translate weight into 154, then you just want to see Boots do what he's normally done and continue to move forward. But if you're somebody who has questions about Boots and you're not really sure where he is right now, who he actually is, and if that style against lesser opponents would translate into a division where he's probably going to be fighting a lot more champions, and we could say pretty much pound for pound, there are better fighters and more dangerous fighters at 154, then you might be thinking about things like his defense, his ability to stick to a plan, his strategy. You're wondering if the strategy that he has approached boxing with at 147 will translate, and if he's willing to adjust if it doesn't translate. What is Bozy working on strategy-wise? So this gives us an opportunity to get a litmus test as to who Boots is going to be at 154. How is the extra weight going to do with him? Is he going to be a stronger fighter, just as fast? Does he slow down? And also his shot absorption. Can he take the punches the way he did at 147? And also the 154 pounders, are they going to is that power going to translate up to 154 to where he's able to stop fighters the way he was doing it at 147? That's what we'll be looking for. Whether you're disappointed with the opponent or not, either way, Boots is boxing that you must see. He's must watch boxing, and it's going to do great. I understand the ticket sales are doing well in Philadelphia, and I'm expecting a packed out event and a very decent undercard, in my opinion, right? Unfortunately, Khalil Cole won't be there. He had to get pulled out the last minute. That was going to be a great fight between him and Jesse Hart. But regardless, the rest of the card is very interesting. Going into this fight, personally, I'll tell you guys up front, what I'm looking for is I want to see Boots be a little bit more. I want to see him be a little bit more disciplined in there, right? And I know some people will push back at the idea, because I understand the price of a good fight. And we don't want our fighters to be too reserved to the point to where the fight is boring and the pace is unbearable to watch. But at the same time, as we're watching Boots, and as I'm watching Boots, I'm watching him fight in Lima. I'm picturing that fighter in the ring with Virgil Ortiz or Sebastian Fundora or Bakram Murtazaliev or any of the other fighters. I'm picturing him, if there's an opportunity served to Boots, to potentially move up to 160 to do something special up there, maybe against a Terrence Crawford. You never know, right? How does the Boots that is right now, moving right now, translate into these bigger fights? We haven't seen Boots in those fights yet, right? And I'm assuming we will see a lot of that, especially on the back end of Eddie Hearn managing and making partnerships with Turkey Al-Sheikh and Riyadh Season, and also making this partnership marketing deal with Rock Nation. So there's going to be a lot of energy and resources pushed into matchroom fighters, potentially. Boots Ennis being probably one of the fighters who's going to get the most infusion of resources, because Eddie Hearn really believes that Jerron Boots Ennis is that kind of a fighter, right? He really believes that. And I think most of his fans and most people believe that too, off the eye test. I mean, keep in mind, a year ago, everybody wanted to see Jerron Boots fight Terrence Crawford. After Terrence Crawford finished fighting Errol Spence, people were picking Jerron Boots to be able to beat Terrence Crawford. So a lot of expectations put on Jerron Boots Ennis. So going into the 154 division, and Eddie Hearn now just renewing a contract with Jerron Boots Ennis for I don't know how many fights. I gotta assume that he's going to get a big push. There's going to be money in the Boots game. There's money for fighters, and there's paydays out there for fighters who are willing to sign that contract. But it all starts right here at this fight right here with Usman Lima. So you guys let me know what you guys think in the comment section. What are you looking to see in Boots? Is Boots okay the way he is, and you just want to see him dispatch of Usman Lima? Or is this an opportunity for Boots to go ahead and show us this new version or an evolved version that's more patient, that can take his time? Let's get some good rounds in. Yeah, and of course, I would love to see a good stoppage, right? But I personally would like to see Jerron Boots Ennis be hit less, be more defensively responsible. Because at the end of the day, we are creatures of habits. And what we do most of the time is probably what we're going to do all of the time. And I don't know how comfortable I am with Boots getting punched as many times as he did against David Avanesian, or maybe even in Karen against, let's say, Virgil Ortiz, right? Let's say in a lot of fighters, right, at 154. It's a different division. But let's see how Boots moves up. Let's see how it translates. I'll be watching the fight just like you guys, and we'll meet up and discuss what happens after the fight, obviously. Actually, I think I might be doing a live for that fight. So guys, tap in and look out for that thumbnail. That might be coming to you guys. But listen, put it in the comment section. Let me know what you think about this fight, what you're looking forward to see in this fight. I know a lot of people are disappointed in it, but this is the fight that we have in front of us. And if you're going into it, what are you going into it thinking about? What are you going into it trying to see? And if it doesn't turn out that way, does this change our view on who Boots is? If he has a very competitive fight with Usman Lima and he's not able to dispatch of him and he wins a split decision or something of that nature, is that a bad sign for the future of Boots? Or is Usman Lima not getting the proper amount of credit that he probably deserves as a fighter? I think it's a little bit of both, right? It's a little bit of both. We're not familiar with Usman Lima, but at the end of the day, he's here on the big stage. He's got only one loss on his record, and he's bringing in IBO championship belt with him. So, and he's a big, strong, committed, hungry fighter. So I'm looking forward to see a competitive fight. Guys, let me know what you think in the comment sections. Before you leave, guys, hit that thumbs up for me. Let's go ahead and do that for the channel. And if you haven't subscribed to the channel, take an opportunity to go ahead and do that. Until the next one, it's your boy Clay, said ATB Combat Media. And at the end of the day, at this point, we out.